3 to 5K is the budget I most often hear from people trying to start Airbnb. Some people are told it's more than enough, other people are told it's nowhere near enough. Usually when people ask me how much is needed, I usually recommend a budget of at least 3 to 5K. So in this video, I wanted to break down exactly what this budget can actually get you and realistically what results you can expect to achieve. So before we go any further, we first need to establish what are the costs involved for actually setting up an Airbnb, because that 3 to 5K budget, it's not all going to go into furnishing. For the majority of people starting out, they'll be using the rent-to-rent business model. So therefore your cost will be your first month's rent, which obviously you pay in advance, quite likely a deposit as well, which usually equals another month's worth of rent, and then any furnishing and staging costs to obviously bring the property up to standard. The deposit money you will get back at the end of your agreement, but it's important that you have this money at the beginning to be able to cash flow yourself into the deal. Now, because rent and furnishing costs can vary so much, you won't be able to just take on any property. And that's the truth. For myself, I got some properties that are over £3,000 a month in rent. If your budget is only 3K to begin with, then that's gonna completely wipe you out. Similarly, if you wanna take on a 4 or 5 bedroom house, it's gonna cost you a lot more to furnish it. Just think about all the beds you've got to buy, towels, linen, it's gonna seriously add up. So if you wanna take on a more expensive rental property or a larger one, you're gonna need a bigger budget to obviously match that. And this is why it's so important that if you are on a budget, you know how to select appropriate properties, or you're also aware of the different strategies you can use to help reduce your upfront cost. For example, you may just wanna focus on 1 bedroom properties. 1 beds, the rent's gonna be a lot lower, and equally, to kit out and fully furnish that property is gonna cost you a lot less money as well. Alternatively, what you could do is actually just focus on furnished properties. That way you're not having to spend that money on furnishing. All you need to do is buy some linen and towels, maybe a few bits of decor, some extra amenities, and then you're pretty much good to go. Another thing you can do is utilize negotiation strategies such as getting a cheaper rent. Quite often the price that you would have seen online on the Rightmove advert or on Zoopla, that's just the asking price. It doesn't mean that's the lowest amount the landlord would actually accept. So when I ever take on deals, I often lowball, put in a lower offer to try and negotiate that rent down. The second thing I'll do is to actually negotiate paying no deposit. If you've had to pay 1 month's worth of rent as a deposit on 10, 20 properties, you're end up with tens of thousands of pounds in money that's tied up. And that could have been way better used in maybe taking on new deals, in furnishing costs, or even just improving your systems. So this is one of the first things that I teach all of my mentees that come on my program is how they can get around paying a deposit and help negotiate themselves a better deal. And lastly, what you can also do is utilize financing or credit for all of your furniture. So funnily enough, the property I'm in right now, I actually financed all of this furniture. I paid just over £200 a month for it. And it meant that for this deal, I literally only paid my first month's rent and 200 quid for my first installment of furniture, and I was pretty much good to go. And it's been cash flowing positive ever since. So when you know how to be resourceful and different strategies to help you reduce your upfront costs, you can take on better properties without needing a bigger budget. So what is 3 to 5K enough for? Well, in most major cities like Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, you can pick up a 1 bedroom property for under £800 in rent a month. Even if you've had to pay a deposit on top of this as well, you're probably picking up keys for around £1,500–1,600. Then if you've had to fully furnish it, maybe you spend another £1,500 to £2,000 depending on how far or how much you want to kit it out. And if it already came furnished, then that's going to be a lot less, maybe max £500, because it probably already came with a bed, maybe a dining room table, a sofa. So for a 1 bedroom property in most cities, even if it came unfurnished, you're probably looking at maximum £3,500. So if your budget is around 3 to 3.5K, then a property like this is going to be a lot more suitable to your budget. As for 2 bedroom properties, in most major cities, you can probably get a rental price for under £1,300 a month. So again, if you've had to pay a deposit on top of that, maybe you picked up keys for around £2,500. If that property came unfurnished, you may want to put another £2,500 to £3,000 into furnishing, but that will again be on a more premium side. If you want to be a little bit more resourceful, a bit more thrifty, buy some secondhand stuff, such as from Gumtree or Facebook Marketplace, you definitely can, and all of these numbers will be a lot less. I've even got a video on my YouTube channel with a couple of my mentees showing me their property. They utilized a lot of Facebook Marketplace when they set it up. It was on a good budget and it turned out amazingly well. So if you are setting up a 2 bedroom property that comes furnished, maybe it's going to cost you around £3,000, including deposit. If it came unfurnished, maybe it's looking at like a bit more, 3.5, 4, 4.5, maybe even up to 5K if your rent was a little bit more. Now you may be asking, what do I do if my rent's more expensive? For example, you're in London, maybe the average price for a 2 bed's more like £2,000. Well, it's not impossible, but it's gonna be a little bit more trickier on that budget. And you'll definitely have to utilize some of the strategies I spoke about in this video. For example, 0 deposit. That way you can maybe spend £2,000 on your first month's rent, pay no deposit, and then you can put another £3,000 towards furnishing costs, and then you're all in for around 5K. Equally, you may wanna focus on furnished properties. That way you could afford to spend a little bit more on your rent, maybe £2,500 a month on rent, another £2,500 towards your deposit, and again, you're all in for 5K. What you'll normally find as well is that when you take on fully furnished properties where the rent's slightly more, in general, the quality of furniture is normally a little bit better as well. So that's always going to be a positive. So ultimately, you can take on better properties within that budget. You just need to be a little bit more selective and also know how to negotiate yourself a good deal. So what does 3 to 5K not get you? Well, if you want to take on a property in a more expensive area in the UK where your rent's like over £1,600 a month, you've had to pay a deposit as well, it also comes fully unfurnished, it's very unlikely you'll be able to do it within that budget. Similarly, if you want to take on, let's say like a 4-bedroom house that comes unfurnished, the furnishing cost alone will probably be around 4K. So it's very unlikely, again, you'll be able to squeeze it in your budget. Also, if you want a very luxurious Airbnb, if you want to have premium decor and furnishing, that's going to cost you a lot more. Although your returns will be very good because some people like that sort of luxury look and feel, it's going to fall outside of your budget. And it also does not give you margin for error. You cannot afford to overpay on rent or buy furniture you don't need. You need to ensure everything goes smoothly, which is why it's normally good to work with someone who's been there and done it so they can help you and guide you through the process, because most beginners normally make some sort of mistake that end up costing them money. The first unit is normally a learning curve. You'll normally make 1 or 2 mistakes here and there, but by not having that margin for error, it means that you don't have that comfort of having like a emergency fund that you can dip into should something go wrong. And lastly, it doesn't give you the ability to outsource work. For myself, for any new units that I take on now, I can afford to pay other people to set up the property, or I can maybe take on a property that's in a slightly lesser condition and put £500,000 into some sort of refurbishment works or improvements to make the property look nicer. When you don't have the budget for that, you won't be able to do so. You'll have to get your hands dirty and do it all yourself, which is okay, but time is money. And doing it all yourself may cost you a week to 2 weeks to get that property ready. For me, I can get my properties turned around in 24 to 48 hours just by paying a professional to come in and do the job, probably even better than I can. So what kind of returns can you expect on a budget of 3 to 5K? Well, every property is different along with every single deal, but as a general rule of thumb, on an investment of around 3K, you'll probably be expecting to make maybe 600 to 650 a month. On an investment of 4K, around 700 to 750 profit per month, and at an investment of 5K, you're probably looking at around 800 to 850 pounds in profit. In general, most deals, you're probably breaking even around the 5 months mark. So in a year, you're effectively just over doubling your money. However, this is not guaranteed just because you have the budget. You first need to understand how to find good profitable deals. Just because you can afford the rent or you can afford to take on the property doesn't mean it's going to be profitable on Airbnb. Like 3 to 5K won't always get you the perfect Airbnb, but it can definitely get you the first one. And for most people, that's the hardest part. What matters isn't how impressive your first unit is, it's whether or not it gets you into the game properly. I've got mentees who have literally started and then scaled their business from an investment less than 3K. But you do need to come into this with realistic expectations. You can't be expecting to make 10K from literally month 1. But if you learn the business, you build a solid foundation and then scale, you can definitely achieve great things with a budget less than 5K.